Hi, everybody. Welcome to a new podcast. My name is JJ Vola. Alongside here is my cousin Cal Vola. Today we have a special guest, Spencer, which does a recruiting, which is quite the interesting job. I've never heard of it before, and we're going to dive into what he does and exactly what it takes to be a recruiter for a company. Spencer, thank you so much for being a part of today's podcast.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah,
it's exciting.
Now, just explain to us quickly, what do you do, and then we'll kind of dive into your story.
Yeah. No, that's a good question. That's kind of the first question I get when everyone asks what I do for a living. And my best kind of description of it is I find jobs people. So a lot of people, when they think of recruiters, it's like, oh, hey, can I come to you if I need a job? I'm unemployed. I'm looking for a new switch. Yeah, there may be some context in which I can help, but we are more consultants in that we partner with companies if they're looking for a director of marketing, if they're looking for a new VP of HR, they come to us and say, hey, this is what we're looking for. This is our criteria, kind of build out a profile. We provide market intel and basically go to market for them, selling the role, selling the company. Headhunting is kind of the more savage term for recruiting, I guess. Right. And you don't like to say headhunting. It just seems like
it's about
you got a little bit of a mean streak.
Sure.
So recruiting is the more polite term for it. But you essentially headhunt passive job seekers, people who aren't applying to jobs online, sell the job to them, sell them back to the company in a human trafficking way, and kind of run the process from there and try and make marriages happen. So
that's right.
That's the job.
That's
really
cool, man. Wow.
We'll definitely dive more into obviously what you do, but let's talk about your journey. Like, where did you start? What was your first job? What kind of education did you go through? Walk us through your life of working.
Sure. So I guess first official job ever was a paper route. I got that in elementary school. Maybe grade 5, grade 6, just in my local neighborhood, 50, 60 houses, 3 days a week. That was, I guess, as far back as it goes employment-wise. And then, I guess, first respectable, you can actually call it a job would be, I worked for my whole grade 12 years flipping burgers at Wendy's.
Awesome.
And then I progressed from flipping burgers to, drive-through, running window, cash, all that kind of stuff. So I did that for about a year. And then all through university, so all 4 summers, and then even a little bit during my 4th year, I landscaped. So I was cutting grass, picking weeds, doing garden beds, that whole shebang. Wow. So that was kind of pre and during university what I did for work.
And what did you go to school for?
Business. Okay. Specifically marketing. Studied marketing.
Interesting. Yeah. We need a marketer.
Yeah. Okay, so that's actually the funny thing. I know nothing about marketing. Absolutely nothing. I specialized in marketing not because I was super interested in marketing, but because I wanted nothing to do with accounting, finance, even HR at that time. There weren't many dudes doing it, so I was like, I think I should probably do something else.
Sure.
So I picked marketing just because it was kind of the lesser of all evils.
Yeah.
And it was good. I mean, I liked the courses I was taking. I liked the idea of, I studied different marketing strategies and theories and stuff like that. But then it wasn't really until my 4th year where there's this kind of capstone or whatever, cornerstone course for marketing that everyone has to take before you graduate in marketing, and it kind of pulls together everything you've learned in your degree. And the end project is you have to pick a company, interview them, and basically come up with a full-fledged marketing plan for them.
Okay.
From strategy, even execution, building out some stuff.
Wow.
And I was so lost. I remember I got up on the final presentation. I'm the best idea that I came up with was to put this company's name and logo on those Bam Bam things, the blow up inflatable at sports games. And hand them out at the university games.
Wow.
As that'll really get people being oh man, this company's awesome, whatever.
Right.
I remember the prof kind of looking at me are you serious? That's the best you could. You spent 4 years here. That's the best you could come up with. So it became pretty evident that a career in marketing was probably not going to be not going to be my thing.
Sure.
So
Sure.
Interesting.
yeah.
That's so funny, man. I mean, so you went like you didn't want to do the HR, which
Yeah.
is funny because that's now
not
what
I'm-
you're doing,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And it's funny. There's so many different elements to HR, which
Yeah.
is pretty cool, and
Yeah.
and recruiting and people and all that is kind of learning all about that. So,
Yeah.
where did you go to school?
I went to school. It's like a small private university in BC called Trinity Western. Went out there. Actually, I took a gap year after high school.
Okay.
Did some traveling. Went to a Bible school actually for 6-7 months in England. Just didn't know what I wanted to do after university, so I was like, I'll take a gap year, go travel, meet some people. A bunch of people I met there were going to the same school. They were from the Lower Mainland. So I was like, I'll give this a look. So I went. A big draw for me is it's smaller class sizes, or maybe like 20, 25 max. So I really liked the idea of like, I can have dinner with my professors. Like I can have a one-on-one relationship with them. They know me by name. They're invested in my learning and my education.
Right.
Which you just don't really get at a lot of bigger schools. Like you're in lecture halls of 1,000 people and
Right,
having to like buzz in answers. Like it's like that was not, knowing my personality was not where I thought I would do well. So
So are you that type of like learner? Like, I mean, there's people that can, sit in those lectures of 1,000 people and be able to, take in the information and be able to learn that way. But like, there's a lot of people out there that are like very hands-on and like need like that one-on-one sort of time and whatnot. So
totally. Yeah. Active participation, having like discussions in class, group work, presentations, like that's really where I thrived. If I was in a lecture hall, like I'd be on Twitter watching hockey games. Like I don't think you don't feel as engaged or as part of the kind of, it's a lot easier to hide, right? If you're in a room of 20 people, you can't really be screwing around. Like it's pretty.
Spencer, get out your
Yeah,
phone.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can't just like fall asleep. Like
Right.
it's like the most obvious thing ever. So,
Yeah.
and the programs too, man, that were available at this school were awesome. Like there's this program that they have for 3rd and 4th year business students called the Business Mentorship Program. Basically, they get this guy in who I don't know if he's just connected to a bunch of faculty or what, but he's like this all-knowing like matchmaker, kind of like a recruiter actually, kind of guy.
Cool.
And you sit down, and he's like, what are you passionate about? What do you see yourself doing after school? And then he takes down all of that information and pairs you up with an alum who is like in that field and like doing similar work. So it's funny. I sat down with him and he's like, well, if you were to like tell me what you're about, what would you say? And I'm like, man, I don't know. Like, I like people. I like connecting with people. I like telling stories. I believe everyone has value.
Right.
I love like, bringing that value out. And he's like, say no more. I got your guy. And I was like, oh, sick. Like, I love that. Pairs me up with this alumni who owns his own search firm. Boutique recruiting agency in Fort Langley called Smart Savvy. They specialize in marketing and communications roles. So I met with him several times throughout the year, and he had me do this personality test and was kind of like helping me through stuff. And ironically enough, never suggested that I look into recruiting as a job ever. Never came up. Like we did all these tests and whatever, and it was like, hey, are you interested in law enforcement? Like, are you interested in, I was kind of like, I had a lot of social jittery energy. Like my legs were tapping. He's like, I can't see you sitting in an office. Like you got to be out doing stuff. So recruiting never came up as a possibility.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So then how did you get into recruiting?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like most people in this space, like it just kind of finds you, right? As good recruiters do when you're not looking.
Interesting.
Right? That's kind of
Okay.
our whole shtick is you're not looking, but hey, here
It
we
finds
go.
you.
Yeah, exactly. So
Interesting. Wow.
no, like when you're in university, no one's, hey, what do you want to do after this? I'm going to go be a recruiter. Only people maybe like, because it is a function of HR, that may be something that they see as an entry point, maybe want to like break in, get the feet wet kind of thing. But no one is like actively pursuing being a recruiter. So it was actually in my first job out of university was sales. And it was in that job Someone just reached out on LinkedIn. I wasn't actively looking. Said, hey, we've got an opening up in our agency supporting one of our partners. Really like your background. Would you be interested in the chat? I was like, oh, yeah, sure. Like I'm down. Got on the phone. Really liked what I heard. Had never really considered recruiting. I figured, if the owner of a firm didn't really think going into it was my thing, probably should listen to his advice.
Right.
But yeah, I had the chat. Few interviews later, and I left my sales job and joined this firm.
It's just kind of funny how a recruiter found you.
Exactly. Exactly. I fell victim to my own game.
Yeah.
I'm not above
like
it.
this stuff works.
Yeah. I was like, man, you guys are magicians. I don't know if it's evil or crazy.
Sure.
Crazy.
Wow. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So then let's dive into your job. I mean, what does it take day to day to be a recruiter? What is it that you have to do?
Yeah. I guess there's two different sides to the desk that you can find yourself on in recruitment that make up what they call a 360 desk. So on the first 180 of it, it's strictly recruiting. You get a job order, say, hey, you would have an intake call with the client, build out the profile. This is what we're looking for. Years of experience, hard skills, soft skills, companies you should pull from, companies you should stay away from, yada, yada, yada. And you go to market with that profile and network it, whether it's through existing connections that you have, referrals, a lot of LinkedIn work, just cold messages, trying to get people to hop on the phone with you, have a call that you find out what their current situation is, what if they, really pitch them on the job, see if it's something that could be a fit. So it's a lot of just time on the phone with candidates. Any day you could have anywhere from 5 to 8 interviews or screening calls with candidates, having them pitch you on them and their background and experience, and then you turning around and really compelling them and convincing them as to why this is a job worth looking at, whether it's progression, whether it's culture, money,
Right, because you guys
work from home, whatever.
I guess you really got to understand, is there a reason for them to leave their situation?
Yeah.
And it could be money, it could be location, it could be anything, right?
It could be anything.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, right. And so right now, a lot of it is, hey, listen, my employers want me back in office 3 days a week. If you can give me 2 and it's closer to home, I'll make a lateral move for that kind of thing. Or my employer wants me back 5 days a week. A lot of people moved at the start of COVID. Mm-hmm. They want me in 5 days a week. I live in Barrie. I live in whatever. You're like, oh, well.
Right.
Or Grimsby or Hamilton, all of these places that people flocked to during COVID that now are being called back into the office and can't make it happen. They just are, for whatever reason. Lifestyle changes, you name it. So
Got it.
yeah.
And then, so some of the people that you work with, is there specific industries that you work with, or I guess is it based on income? So does someone have to make over $100,000 a year to be able to work with you guys, sort of thing, or how do you qualify your clients?
Yeah, good question. So our firm specifically, every firm is split up differently. You'll have firms that specialize in different things or different roles. There are firms out there that specialize in nonprofit, tech, manual labor, you name it. Our firm has 3 divisions: engineering, tech, and professional. Engineering is more, blue collar, manufacturing, construction, mining, those types of industries. Tech is pretty self-explanatory. Those are your developer roles. We've got a full division for that. And then the division that I'm on is professional. And so that's more white collar, HR, accounting, finance, sales, marketing, ops, those kinds of things.
Because I guess if you specialize in one thing that you understand a category more that other people are, more educated in, then you probably don't know what it takes to grab somebody for that field.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and your network too is, you try to build a certain amount of depth so that if you have similar positions come up, you already know kind of where to go and who to talk to, and there's that familiarity there. And also, candidates aren't the recruitment industry has become a lot more competitive over the past few years. Okay. Because there was a huge hiring boom. Recruiters were everywhere. People would be getting 3, 4, 5 LinkedIn messages a day. So if you look like an idiot and you don't know what you're talking about, like people are going to snuff that out pretty quickly and not give you the time of day.
Right. Sure.
Like if a tech person is on the phone and like, oh, Spence, is this primarily like full stack, front end, back end? What are the different? I'm like, great question. I have another and be like, you're wasting my time. Get lost
right.
kind of thing.
You're green.
Yeah,
thing,
yeah,
right?
exactly. You're like, why would I want you representing me to this client? You don't even know what I do or what the job is. So you have to have a certain degree of
knowledge in that field. Yeah.
Yeah, the basics to get by. I mean, at the end of the day, if I was an expert, I'd be a developer. Like I'm still a recruiter at the end of the day, right? Like I'm limited in terms of my expertise, but you gotta be able to at least pretend like you know what you're talking about.
I just said it like can someone, like, let's say Cal and I were working at a job, can I come talk to you to find a better job?
Yeah, you could. And that's what I was saying earlier about the kind of two different ways you can approach it is recruiting. Some people view it as like finding people jobs.
Right.
Whereas I kind of view it more in the way that it works more conventionally is you find jobs people. It all depends on what you start with. Like I rarely ever, if I find someone, like if you're a killer production supervisor, for example, in manufacturing, you're looking for a new job and I'm specialized in the space and I've got a bunch of clients that I know would be interested in your profile, I can do what we call as like a skill market, write up a profile and blast it out to all these clients and be like, hey, I'm representing, JJ here. Brings this to the table. His expertise is XYZ. He's looking for this amount of money. Would you be interested in chatting? We do that approach when we get more, like if you get a rock star candidate, for example, and you are very familiar with your client base and people that would have interest in their profile. But more commonly, it's you start with job description and profile of what they're looking for, and then go to market.
Right.
And you're really building out like this Frankenstein of kind of their perfect unicorn candidate at times of what they're looking for. So you can, a lot of times it's luck. Like if you reach out to me and I just so happen to have something similar on the go. But that's maybe one of the things that I wish I had more control over is like friends and people in my circle that are like, hey, can you help me out? It's like, maybe, I don't know. Like if I have something on the go or like, hey, my brother-in-law is moving here from the US. Can you help him find something? It's like, maybe, I don't know. Like I can try and see if there's anyone I know, but that's not really how it works.
Sure. Right. Because, I mean, a lot of jobs you see posted out there, they give you the job description, usually trainings included, all that kind of stuff. But I guess you're really trying to find people who are already well educated, understand what they're talking about. So it's an easy transition into something that they already do. Right?
Yeah. Or sometimes you get to a point in a search where maybe the client's compensation level doesn't lend itself to that. So sometimes you then kind of come to an agreement, and that's when the kind of consultant approach comes in where you're like, hey, listen, people that are already a production manager, I'm just keep using production, a production manager aren't going to move for your compensation band. How would you feel about targeting production supervisors that are maybe a little bit more green? Find someone really strong that kind of has the fire in the belly, the runway to learn, grow,
can-do attitude.
Can-do attitude. Sure, you get him in there, learn your systems, and then he's going to be just a killer production manager.
Sure.
Right.
And it's kind of this build it or buy it mentality, right? Like, do you want, if you want to buy it, you better have the compensation band to be able to afford it. Otherwise, you're going to have to build it. And that means taking someone that is maybe a little bit off, missing a couple things that you're going to have to teach them. Sure. But it means that, they may not cost as much.
That's so cool, man. I mean, what a crazy world that is.
It's wild.
Do you ever go to two people at their jobs too?
No.
Okay, because I was curious. I was like, I wonder if you go and actually be like pretend you're a customer.
No, man. I've heard stories so back in the day, it's not that long ago that LinkedIn wasn't a thing.
Right.
But pre-LinkedIn, whatever advanced technology of having access to databases and networks of candidates. Mm-hmm. I was talking to my old boss. He used to just go on the internet, look up their competing, their closest competitors, go on their directory and just like call the guy's office number. I even talked to my dad. Like my dad has had headhunters call his landline directly and like pitch an approach. I've never done that. Like that kind of, that scares me a little bit, to be honest with you. Like that's hardcore, and that's kind of next level. It's never had to really get to that point, fortunately, but maybe it will one day. Who knows?
And what's like the longest that it's taken for you to like fill a position sort of thing? Or you're like, man, this is really, really tough. Or, from inception, like client comes to you and then the longest probably is taken.
Yeah. From start to finish, a good few months, probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 months. Like there's been clients pay a lot of money for our services, like a lot of money. Okay. And so they don't come to you with the easy stuff. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, I'm looking for a, salesperson. It's good money. Cause if it's a genuinely good role, pays well, and like is with a good company, they can probably fill it themselves most of the time. If you have a good relationship with them and you have a proven track record of finding them rock stars, maybe they come to you first before trying to fill it themselves, right?
Okay. Yeah.
But typically it's maybe the location's a little bit wonky. Maybe, there's been some shady reviews, or the company doesn't have the best reputation, or there's a lot of high turnover. So, I've had stuff in like Timbuktu, rural Ontario, that's like manufacturing, like hard labor. I had with like a food and bev manufacturing client. They wanted a QA with like a quality supervisor or something for one of their plants. Had to be fluent in Mandarin.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Had to be fluent in Mandarin and from the pastry industry. Oh. So that's like, okay, so we're talking like 3 people, 4 people, right? Like there's like, and also I can't really screen for fluent in Mandarin. Like that's not in my toolbox, right? Yeah. So you get some stuff like that come through that's just like, that's tougher and takes a long time.
Yeah, 100%. And like, I guess the shortest, like someone comes in, you're like, boom, I know exactly like who you can work with, sort of thing. And
I've had one and dones. I've had one call close. Someone shows up, has like a 30-minute interview, walks out with the job offer, starts Monday, kind of thing. Wow. Rare, really, really rare. That's only maybe happened a few times, but there's some. You can hit a slam dunk here and there. That's a nice breath of fresh air.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I guess a lot of people don't necessarily want to leave their jobs, right? I mean, I know a lot of people get not only emotionally attached, people they work with. There's a lot of that goes into transitioning to a whole new profession, especially if they've been there for 5+ years and they built a relationship with these people, and all of a sudden you're just like, I'm going, see ya. Yeah. Right? It's out of nowhere, right? Yeah. Like they could be perfectly normal one day, and then the next day they're just like, I found a new job. Yeah. Right? Or they found me.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Now, I guess recruiting would probably have been a lot more successful in the last, I would say, couple of years, because you see far more companies, signs going up, hiring. Like, is it more crazy now than it's ever been in the recruiting industry? Or
crazy? Yes, definitely crazy. But I don't know if it's because of the volume of hiring that's going on. I'd say during, call it start of COVID, like March 2020, whatever that was. Yeah. Things came to a screeching halt. Like I was probably on 10 jobs down to 2 or 1. People were like, nope, hiring freeze. There's this virus, layoffs, whatever. Right. And then it wasn't really until maybe that summer things really started to pick up, because then, interest rates and like the economy started booming, and you had all these companies that were like, had these crazy forecasts and were growing like 2, 3, 10x seemingly overnight. And so they're just hiring. And so that was a huge boom. And it was, you got to the point where you were turning down companies because you're like, I just don't have the capacity. If you pay us a retainer, maybe we'll look at it. But if not, I just don't have the time.
Sure.
Whereas now you look at the economy as is, inflation and interest rates being where they are, a lot of companies are like, oh man, like we way over leveraged, and like our forecasts are like not accurate at all anymore. You look at what's happening in tech. layoffs, like mass layoffs. And so it's definitely slowed down a little bit on the hiring front. And so now what's happening is there seems to be an overpopulation of, there's more recruiters than there are jobs to recruit on. So now the game is more sales and differentiating yourself from the other agencies out there and kind of competitive advantage, as opposed to just, do you have the capacity to recruit on it? Everyone's got capacity to recruit right now.
Got it.
But not everyone has the roles to recruit on.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Right.
That's kind of crazy because, like, I mean, you hear everyone kind of talking about, oh my God, like, I'm hiring, I can't find staff, I can't. And those might just be like super low entry type jobs.
Yeah,
but,
it's like, paying like $10 an hour, like below minimum wage. You're like, I can't find anyone. It's like, yeah, because they don't want to be homeless. You know what I mean? Like, you can't.
I'm going backwards with this job.
Seriously, it's like, that's because people need to live.
Sure.
But it's weird. It's a weird power struggle right now because, on one hand you have companies that are struggling to find people, and then there's candidates on the other end of things saying, I can't find a job. It's like, how can those two things mutually exist at the same time? And it's just, I just think that candidates are still shooting super high for massive pay raises, crazy work from home situations, and employers are trying to take a little bit of that back and being a little bit more strict on work from home policies, more modest pay increases and stuff. Sure. So that's maybe why they're struggling a little bit more. So.
Yeah, and people, I mean, even build out like this lifestyle that they're used to making like maybe 80 or 100 grand, but right now the market is saying 60 grand sort of thing, and people just can't come to terms, with that, and they have to take that.
Yeah, stay at the one that's paying you 80. That's another thing too. Like, I mean, like you were saying earlier, JJ, about people that are sitting there perfectly happy in jobs. Not every recruiter operates the same, but I'm straight up with people. Like, if I come to you with something that's not any better than what you have right now, I'm not gonna pitch you on it and try and get you to make a move just for the sake of it, so I can put a check mark next to the job order. Because then you're probably gonna leave in 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is, and we're gonna be back to the drawing board, right? So I'm straight up with people where like, hey, I don't think this makes sense for you. You're making great money. You're not unhappy. Let's keep in touch in case there's something that's like substantially better that comes down the line. So
sure.
People appreciate the honesty.
It's the honest salesman. Like those guys.
What's an honest salesman? Never. Tell me when you meet one.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd say pretty honest. Probably a good 5% out there.
That's what they all say. That's what they all say.
I love it. That's great.
It's so funny. So I mean, in this world, what really kind of hits people? Like, is it money? Do they want more money? Do they want more time off? Do they want benefits? Like, what's kind of the big one for people that really like that you've seen has really persuaded someone to move to a different career?
So right now, I think the two biggest things are money and flexibility. People may be open to making a lateral move if they can stay home with the kids an extra 1-2 days a week, or they don't have to pay for public transit, or maybe even take a little bit of a pay cut because those things, they're not paying for daycare the extra couple of days. They're not paying for the GO train, which is stupid expensive. Those things all add up. So money is typically the end all be all. I mean, you get some places that are like, most candidates candidate calls, in my opinion, go the same way. A lot of the time, you're, hey, you've been with your company for a year and a half. Why are you open to making a move? Like, what would have you like, growth. It's like everyone throws out, I want growth. It's like, well, you've been in your job 6 months. Right. Like, maybe wait for, like, you haven't even been there long enough to earn a promotion. So like, they're not growth. It's like the growth of the bank account is what everyone's, especially now, right? Like, everything's so expensive. Groceries are expensive, gas, houses, everything. So everyone's after the bottom line, and may try and hide behind, career growth or other things, which sometimes are genuine. But in my experience, it's typically the almighty dollar.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then I guess it's up to you to kind of like dig deeper on those guys and actually figure out,
you
what
gotta,
does that actually mean?
You got to. I remember the first the business mentor that I had, the guy that owned his own search firm, called it smoking out the pretenders, which is really what it is. Like, you got to really kind of have a high BS meter, for lack of a better word. That's like, hey, are you just like, you pulling my leg right now? Or are you serious? Because I'd rather decide now if you're honest than, I have an offer in front of you from a client and you're going to go rogue on me.
Sure.
Right. Like, let's nip this in the bud early.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
And then I guess the other one is like corporate culture. So, I mean, companies that invest in like team building and making sure that they have like a really strong corporate culture, and that when people do get a call from, I guess, guys like you that want to bring them over to another company, they're like, you know what, this company really kind of hits it for me. Like, they do all these team building events, barbecues, events with my kids, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Do you find that's a pretty big way for them to kind of combat kind of people like you? And
Yeah, well, for sure. A good culture.
Like
team.
a bad guy.
The big bad recruiter.
Don't steal my people.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yes and no, and I think it's an interesting point you bring up, because I think that especially in recent years, to try and combat some of that, people have defined culture kind of like you just did, and like, oh, well, we have a great culture. Like, we have a ping pong table in our lunchroom. We have pizza lunches, and it's like, well, sometimes a lot of that is just like, window dressing for really brutal company culture. And they just, but we have like video games in our thing. It's like, yeah, but you treat your employees like garbage. Like, that's not culture. Those are accessories that you're calling culture. So if it's genuine culture in terms of like the leadership, the succession planning, the caliber of people that they hire, then yeah, absolutely. There's one of the most notorious quotes in recruiting is like, people don't quit jobs, they quit bad managers. Which is true. Like, the amount of times you think back to like times you've left your own jobs, it's rarely you hate the work itself. Sometimes it is, but a lot of times it's just, a manager's treating you like dirt, or disrespecting you, or not valuing your work, or things like that. So
it's interesting you say that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, I have one of those right now.
Probably shouldn't say it.
Yeah. Just cut.
No, just
not my
current
manager.
You're awesome. Saying that. I just found it interesting that was a big reason as to why people leave.
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, that money could be great, but at the end of the day, it could be absolutely terrible driving into work.
Yeah.
Right.
100%. Like, then that's what I mean when it's like genuine culture. Because like people are like, hiring manager will be like, our culture is great. Like, we had a pizza party last month and had like everyone leave at 4:30 instead of 5.
Right.
It's like, that's you treat your people like garbage. Like, giving them 2 slices of pizza on a Friday is not culture. Like, it's much more
doing stuff, getting
systemic than just kind of like things you throw at people.
Sure.
Because people are smarter now, I would say. Like, your average candidate has gotten smarter over the past few years, at least that I've seen. Like, they don't fall for the
pizza parties.
Yeah, the filler stuff. I keep using pizza parties. Pizza parties are awesome, man. Like,
I love pizza parties.
Yeah, they are too. And genuinely, I may stay at a company if they throw pizza parties. Yeah. But they don't fall for the filler stuff as much anymore. They're nice, but they're not going to be the differentiator between people staying or leaving.
Sure. So I guess, like, what can business owners do to really make sure that their employees are happy in the workplace and they feel fulfilled, and they're going to kind of execute those roles, to the best of their ability?
Yeah. Listen, I would say, well, first of all, ask, which is a really hard thing to do. And then listen without necessarily responding immediately. And some of the things might be hard to hear. And it's a pretty humbling experience, I think, to actually bring yourself to the point where you're kind of opening yourself up to feedback and potential criticism. Like, one of the things that we did at ML6 that was completely foreign to me was at our kind of annual kickoff meeting. We had we have people working remotely across Canada. So that's kind of the 1 week where everyone's in one spot. And we do kickoff, set targets, have fun, all that kind of stuff. They held a kind of town hall where it was an open forum. Like, hey, this was all started by earlier on in the year. They actually sent out through a third party a survey, like a workplace engagement survey. It's completely anonymous. And so in this meeting, they brought up the results and we're like, hey, there's been some pretty consistent feedback that like people are unhappy about this. People are unhappy about this. We're actually good at this. Let's talk about it. And so people, aired it out for a little bit and we're like, hey, I don't like this, this, and this. This is why. Here's what I think we can do better on it. The leadership didn't even necessarily immediately respond. They took a few days to digest it, come back with some action plans on, okay, we hear you. How does this sound as far as moving forward? Is that something that people would enjoy? And actually actioned a few things that have been going really well this year. So, I say that it's an easy thing. It's definitely more conducive to smaller companies because you actually have one-on-one access and are at the same level you have interaction with people every day. Bigger companies, it's maybe a little bit tougher. You just have to, I guess, start at the top and really like have your leadership bought into the same vision and make sure that they're passing that down, which is tough.
And I'm sure for a lot of business owners, it's hard to take negative criticism, especially for a company that you built, you started, employees telling you, how to do it or what's going to make me happy kind of thing, right? And I'm sure that, they get a little insulted in a sense, like, you should be grateful to be here or you should be happy or whatever the case is because you have a good job here, whatever the case is. But, it's a lot more than that. It's
you're 100% right. Dude, there was one question on this survey that was like, I am confident in the direction that this company is going. And that's like, imagine seeing like negative, like your name is on the door and you're seeing people come through that are like, I got some questions on that. It's like, man, that's like my blood, sweat, and tears. And like, I'm feeding your family. How dare you? You know what I mean? Like there's kind of that gut reaction that I can only imagine because like, well, sure. Can you turn your lights on in the morning? You're welcome kind of thing. Right. Like it's, so it's tough. It takes a good amount of humility. And I don't think not like everyone would open themselves up to that.
Yeah. Hard to take negative criticism. And I say it to Cal all the time too. Like it's like us getting a bad Google review or not Google review, but a bad comment in the YouTube. You could sit there and think of everything that you did wrong or just take that comment and just try to implement it in a positive way. Yeah. Right. But, like we said, it could be just the business owner not seeing the full potential of that employee, especially if it's a good employee. Yeah. Right. And sometimes it's more than just money, and the job itself. Yeah. Right. Yep. Totally. But to dive into so like, how does a recruiter get paid? Is it like a hourly, salary based on like a commission style? Like, how does a recruiter get paid?
Yeah. Everywhere does it a little bit differently. So it depends on where you work. So if you're, let's say, like an internal, like you work on a talent acquisition team for a company, that's largely base salary, maybe with a small kind of performance-based bonus depending on how many recs you filled, like retaining, how long are employees staying, that kind of thing. But for agency recruiters, which is what I do, it's typically a mix of base and variable, like commission. Some people do it per quarter, per placement, which is what I'm on right now. Like I make a commission per individual placement. And I've heard of some places that are commission only, which is, it depends on, I guess, stage of life and appetite for risk. But right now I'm base plus commission per placement.
Right. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. And what would you say is like the average, like for like let's say an entry recruiter to someone who's been in the field for 10 plus years, what would be the average of their income roughly?
Yeah. I'd say starting off, recruiting's a tough game. It really is. And what I'll mention on the 5-10 year thing is a lot of agency recruiters don't even see the 5-10 year mark. Oh, sure. Lifespan of an agency recruiter is like 2 years. Wow. If that, because it's just churn and burn. Like it's tough. it's the people business,
Mm-hmm.
which is completely unpredictable. So a lot of times it's like someone gets burned twice in a row by someone that like doesn't show up for their first day or accepts an offer and then asks for more money, or it could be a variety. It doesn't pass a background check. You name it, right? Then you're like, oh, this is stupid. Especially if it's like you have a lot of variable compensation on the line. You're like, this is not sustainable.
Right.
This is not. So a lot of people don't even see the later end career progression of a recruiter. It's really, really rare. But I would say coming into the business, it all depends. I'd say first year, you're probably anywhere 50 to 60, 70.
Yeah.
And then once you get it's all about building your network and you get the process down. You start learning the language, the nuances and stuff like that. It starts to become quicker. You become, you can sniff out the pretenders, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Like you know what's a waste of time and what's worth your time.
Right.
So I'd say like for me, I've been in the game, I don't know, coming on like 3.5 years now.
Right.
Making good money over 6 figures, which is great. And then you can go, like I've a couple of people I've ran into that are 20, 25 years in the business are making, over $500,000, $700,000 a year.
Wow.
Based on it. Because you build your book of business,
Yeah.
right? You get things rolling. And then if you get really, really good and have kind of that appetite for risk, entrepreneurial mentality, you can go out and start your own thing.
Yeah.
Become kind of an independent contractor, and then sky's the limit, right? Because all those fees aren't going agency trickle down to you. It's just straight to your pocket. If you're really, really in the business for a long time and have a certain amount of credibility, like you're a consultant, and you should be paid as a consultant.
Sure.
So if you kind of cheapen yourself and
Yeah.
lower your fees, then that just is kind of speaking to what you think the value of your service is.
And I mean, you get what you pay for, right? At the end of the day. And I mean, you even see like a lot of real estate agents will be like, oh, we only charge like 1% commission.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like, I'll be looking for a house for 3 years.
Yeah.
Because they have to, man. Because they,
Yeah.
that's the only way they get people to work with them.
Yeah.
Is because and so I have that conversation with clients all the time where they're like, oh, well, my current recruiter charges 15%. It's like, well, why are we on the phone? Like, if you're genuinely happy with the results you're getting at 15%, why, like, you're clearly not, right?
Yeah,
so
sure.
like, I know I can deliver at 22, 23, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
That's, just the value of our services, and we have the results and clients to back it up. So yeah, it kind of speaks for itself.
That's cool.
Unreal. Wow.
Yeah.
And then like, I guess for candidates that are out there, I mean, the landscape is changing so much for employment. How many times, I mean, in a lifetime, do you think that people like change their jobs now? Which is,
Oh man,
I mean, it's a very broad question, but I mean, like it's getting crazy out there. Like there are people
Everyone's job
that are-
hopping every year or two, for an extra $1 an hour or two or whatever.
right? And because they kind of have to, like, I mean, I'll say a couple things on that. The first is it's no secret now that the quickest way to get like a substantial raise is to get a new job, right? Like I typically for placements that I'm making, raises are anywhere from 10 to maybe 20% on the high end would be like a pretty substantial, and that person's probably being underpaid as it is.
Okay.
That's kind of the general range that 10 would be a little bit low. You don't get many people leaving for 10% raises unless they're really sold. But you compare that against the 2-3% inflation raises that companies are giving their employees every year. Like it doesn't really compare.
Right.
But on the length of job, what I'll say is, one, it depends on industry. And two, it's a generational thing. Like my dad has been at the same company for like over 30 years and is going to retire within the next year and like hasn't ever really considered making a move. He's happy. It's stable, gets a nice pension.
Mm-hmm.
See you later.
Sure.
That is not like, I don't think you would see that. I want to say ever. It will still happen, but it's rare. Like it's just I think it's a generational thing too. Like we're such a, really short attention span and really you don't have a lot of patience for places.
Sure.
So it's like, if I'm here a year and a half, 2 years, and I'm like, I haven't got a raise in a while. I don't really see a growth plan immediately. See you later. Like that. It's the culture around job changes has really, really changed. Young people are switching every 2 years,
right?
If not quicker than that.
Yeah.
Just because that's what they feel like they have to do in order to keep up with market rate pay.
Right.
Sure.
Interesting.
And companies will pay it, or have been paying it.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's hard to find good people, right? I mean, if
It's
you,
impossible.
I mean, you're in a role for like 2-3 years, you kill it, and you're like, man, someone gets wind of this person that they're like thinking about changing it up, and boom, you come in, I got something for you. Here's an extra 30-40K a year, whatever it may be, and away you go. So
That's the thing. Like, it's like I was saying, it's expensive. Like we charge, a pretty penny for the service that we provide. It's expensive to find good people. It's even more expensive if you hire bad people. Right. So if you pay the upfront cost, get it done right, get it carbon copy to what your needs are, it's a good fit, instead of like messing around. Let's say you don't do your due diligence for whatever reason. I mean, there's mishires everywhere. We still place people that it doesn't end up working out. That's just the nature of people.
Yeah.
But it's really expensive to hire bad people.
Sure.
Sure.
Maybe not initially, but they can do a lot of damage, because then you got to train them, and then you got to train the replacement because they blew it up. So it's a lot of times cheaper to just do it right.
So what's like the minimum amount that you guys would like? Is it like 80,000 a year, 100K a year, 120, something like that? Like, what's the lowest paying gig that you guys would fulfill?
Yeah, again, varies by industry. So I'd say for me in professional, we typically like to play around the 80 and up, maybe 75 and up. In good, like really healthy recruitment markets, we try and stick to manager and up. So like title wise, or if it's an individual contributor, just 75, 80 and up. But in manufacturing, I mean, that's not the reality for everybody, right? Like, we're working on roles that are 60, 55. I filled, when I was just starting and getting my feet wet, a lot of admin roles, exec assistant, customer service roles, just while I was kind of learning the nuances.
Sure.
But now, you just got to really make sure that it's the ROI is there.
Sure.
And you're not spinning your wheels on a $10,000 fee.
Right.
Right. Because then you're going to end up, you're paying an account manager to manage the account, and you're paying a recruiter to recruit on the account.
Got it. Okay.
So if they spend 2 months, like, you're losing money on that placement.
Sure.
If if it's not lucrative enough.
And that type of like job would be found kind of on Indeed or like something like
Yeah,
that, like a job board sort of thing.
Typically,
maybe.
And we have those conversations with clients too, where they're like, "Hey, can you help?" It's like, "Oh, post it online, man. Like, this is not for me. Like, you should, you'll have way better luck just posting it yourself on, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's Glassdoor, whatever people are posting on these days, Workopolis, all that kind of stuff.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
Jeez, man.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, first I want to say a huge thank you for coming on the podcast and sharing your story and telling us everything about what it takes to be a recruiter. I've definitely learned a lot, and I probably got to watch this episode over and over again to really understand what you do. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
One thing we like to always end off the podcast, if you could tell your 20-year-old self-advice, what would it be?
Woo.
Put you on the spot.
Yeah. Lay off the Baconators, probably.
I was going to say, you were talking about Wednesday for a second. I was like, the JBC.
Yeah, don't abuse your 50% off discount would be my... No, man, I would say take advantage of every opportunity, even if it doesn't feel like your forever job, like your end game, right? Because I think back to where I am now, and... I think about things that I learned along the way from other jobs that I didn't really have that perspective when I was in the moment. You look at Wendy's, I learned great customer service skills,
right?
Above average customer service skills. I don't know if you can call it great, but I learned customer service and how to deal with people that, you put 3 tomatoes on a burger and they ask for 2. How do you deal with that? Like, how do you deal with someone who's not happy with the service that you provided and make it better? And then I look at, landscaping, cutting grass. Other than the heat stroke, the biggest thing I took, like, I had a brutal work ethic before I did landscaping, and it just beat me into submission.
Sure.
Like it gave me the drive, the horsepower, the just you're gonna not want to do it, but you just got to put one foot in front of the other, and you just got to make it happen because someone's paying you to do it. You know, my first job in sales, I worked for a company called Cintas, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with. They do like facility services, hygiene products, and work uniforms.
Okay.
So like toilet paper, soap, sanitizer, paper towel, floor mats, all that kind of stuff. Tough business to be in.
Sure.
Like really, really tough.
Yeah.
But I went through rigorous sales training and learned how to objection handle, learned how to, prospecting routines, and all of those things are a part of what I do now. And have kind of rounded me out as a professional. I kind of, it adds different tools to the kit that I use on a daily basis. So I just say, like, you may not understand it now, but have some perspective, because there's like something being built, and you're going to thank yourself for it.
Sure.
Wow.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, Spencer, I just want to say a huge thank you again for coming on today's podcast, telling us your journey and everything that you've gone through, and what it takes to be a recruiter. To everyone listening, watching, thank you so much for being a part of today's podcast. If you did like today's video, be sure to hit that like button and also hit subscribe so you don't miss out on any further content. We will see you in the next podcast. See you guys.
Yeah. Woo! Nice, dude.
That was great.
Ah, boy.
Thanks, guys.
That was awesome.